Hello and welcome to the Wargamer. In this tutorial I'll be showing you how to paint the Reanimates from Rune Wars, and I'll be using the Army Painter range of paints to do so. Before painting, the first task is to prime the miniature, and for this I've used a grey spray primer. Now once you've done this you can actually begin painting, and for the first step I'll be painting the cloth areas on the cape and also the loincloth, and I'll be painting all of these areas first of all with Orc Blood. Now, as with all of the base coats in this tutorial, I would recommend creating a mixture of a 2 parts paint to 1 part water, applying this layer first, allowing it to dry, and then applying a second coat over the top. This will create the best coverage possible. With a nice even base coat achieved, the next step is to apply a wash of purple tone ink. Now this wash will pull into those recesses in the cloth and really help to bring out some of the detail in this miniature. Now the reason for using a purple tone ink instead of any other colour is because it will pull into those recesses, darken the colour down but without losing the vividness of the purple on the miniature. The final step in painting the Reanimates cloth is to highlight them using Warlock Purple. Now even though highlighting does require a steady hand, it is quite easy to do so. Simply take a small brush with just a small amount of paint on the tip of that brush and gently drag it across the raised sections of the cloth. This will create the overall effect of the shadows in the recesses of the cloth being much more prominent compared to the lighter colours that we're now highlighting. The next task in painting our Reanimates is to tackle the green areas of cloth. Now on this miniature it's going to be around the waist, however on some of the other Reanimates such as the archers it can include areas such as the cowl as well. Now we're going to be applying a base coat of Goblin Green to these areas. Now make sure you use a small brush for this, as it can be quite tricky to get into some of these harder to reach areas around the waist. With the base coat of Goblin Green completed, the next step is to apply a wash of Military Shader. This wash will pull into those recesses and really help to bring out the detailing in these cloth areas. The final step in painting the green cloth is to highlight it using Mouldy Clothes. Now if you're struggling with these highlights, I would recommend creating a mixture of 1 part paint to 1 part water. This will help to thin down the paint slightly but also improve the flow as well, which will give you better control when trying to get those fine edge highlights. In this next step I'll be painting both the leather and wooden areas of the miniature, so this includes the belt and also the shield as well. Now starting off with a base coat of leather brown, and as before make sure you create a mixture of 2 parts paint to 1 part water and apply at least 2 thin down coats. After the base coat has been applied, the next step is to apply a wash of strong tone ink across both the leather and wooden areas. This will pull into those recesses, darkening the colour of these areas as well. Now when applying this, make sure you're careful not to overspill onto some of the areas that we've already painted. To finish off both the wooden and leather areas of the miniature, I'll be highlighting both areas using Monster Brown. As before, make sure you just use a small amount of paint on the tip of your brush and really make sure you bring out some of the edge highlights in the shield itself, as it really enhance that wooden grain effect. The next area of our Reanimate I'll be painting will be the bone areas, and for this I'll be starting off with a base coat of Skeleton Bone. In addition to using this paint as the base coat, you can also apply a second highlight to the wooden areas of the miniature. In this case I focused it around the cracked area around the bottom left section of the shield. After achieving a nice and even base coat across the bone areas, the next step is to wash them with soft tone ink. Now when applying this wash, I would recommend creating a mixture of 1 part ink to 1 part water, as applying it straight out of the pot may be a little bit overpowering. To finish off the bone areas of the miniature, I'll now be applying a highlight of Drake Tooth. You want to focus this highlight mainly around the top areas of the skull, and also around some of the facial features of the skull, including the eye sockets and also teeth as well. We will next be tackling the glowing energy emanating from the Reanimate's eyes. Now for this, we want to start off with a base coat of Elemental Bolt. When painting this base coat, make sure you paint the entirety of the eye socket, overspilling ever so slightly to create that glowing effect. To finish off the eye, I'll now be applying a small dot of Toxic Mist to the centre of the eye. Now you want to use a small brush for this, just a small amount of paint on the tip of your brush, and lightly dab it into the centre of the eye. With all of the non-metallic areas of the miniature completed, we can now start working on the metal areas. Now for this I'll be using gunmetal, and I'll be applying it across all of the remaining areas of the miniature we haven't painted yet, including the sword, the metal banding on the shield, and also the armour. Now when painting with metal paint, be extra careful not to overspill onto the areas we've already painted, as they can be quite difficult to paint over if mistakes are made. Now at this point the miniature is looking very clean and pristine, and for something which has been buried in the ground for a while, this isn't very realistic, so we want to apply a wash of mid-brown over the metal areas. This will create the effect of light rust that's built up over the surface and into the recesses. The final step in painting our Reanimates is to apply a highlight of plate mail metal over the metal areas we've painted in the previous steps. By focusing this highlight around the edges and also on some of the raised sections of the miniature, we'll create the effect that these areas have been scratched and scuffed and the rust has been flaked away. And here we have the completed miniature, who you can see I've also based. Now whilst this tutorial focused on the Reanimate warrior, you could apply the exact same colours and techniques to any of the Reanimates, including the archers and the Carrion Lancer rider. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please do let me know in the comments below, and also subscribe to be kept up to date with all of my future content. In the description I have some links to both my Facebook and Instagram pages. From there you can follow me and see what projects that I'm currently working on. And finally, if you'd like to support me in making more content, you can do so by checking out my Patreon page. From there you can donate to me from as little as $1 a month, which will just really help me in producing future content. So all that's left to say is thanks for watching and goodbye.